Thank you, Sam. So we will finish up my portion on Hosea, which is supposed to cover chapters 1 through 3. But before we do that, we'll kind of do just a quick recap. Prophet was a spokesman or a mouthpiece for God, primarily sent to give a warning or an encouragement to the people. They were to teach the people to trust in God and not themselves, remind people of the stipulations of the covenant that they had, reveal messages of hope for future, as well as to point to fulfilled prophecy to confirm their word. Those top three that we have on the chart there, we're going to hit all three of those, planning on hitting all three of those today as we go through this portion in Hosea. Talked about the prophet's life. In general, was it easy or a difficult life? Fair to say it's difficult. They were called to do some things that were not fun, that not anybody would necessarily volunteer for. We talked about Ezekiel. He was a good example of what it meant to be called to be a prophet, and some of the things that he had to do. He was a watchman. He was called to be a watchman to proclaim those things to a rebellious people. We talked about all the 9 different things that he went through that were not very fun. Got into Hosea and kind of specifics about him. He was the son of Beeri from the northern kingdom. Knows prophet's love, and sent to specifically deal with idolatry and the worship of Baal. Then we talked about, kind of went into who Baal was, and what it meant to worship Baal, and there in specifically the land of Canaan. And this will be something that we talked about on Wednesday, but specifically as we go through chapter 2, the things that God talks about kind of specifically will tie in directly to Baal and the things that he was supposed to be the one to thought to provide for them. Talk about the worship of Baal being, drunken feasts and sexual morality, sacrifices, even including children. Talk about what Hosea was called to do. Marry a harlot by the name of Gomer, which this is kind of the slide that we ended on Wednesday, and James brought up that, Gomer, the meaning, Gomer has a specific meaning, her name has a meaning. And, leading into that, now talking about Hosea's children. How many children are listed in chapter 1 as being Hosea's? 3. Each of them have a name, right? Obviously. First one is Jezreel. Second one is Lo-Ru-Amah. And third is Lo-Amim. Show of hands. Anybody have any idea what any of these mean? What the significance of any of them are? I didn't necessarily until I went through and started looking and diving into this a little bit. First one is, go back to that, the names having specific meanings and significance. I think that a lot more Old Testament time, they were named after something. You think of whenever Jacob had the vision of God, he built an altar and he gave it a name. Abraham, as he's traveling through, giving things specific names for whatever meaning. And we see some of that in the New Testament as well, over in John 1:42, when Jesus sees Peter, what does he rename him as? Cephas, right? Gives him that name, which is translated to mean a stone. So, we see some evidence of that in the New Testament, but I don't know, today, I didn't take that into account necessarily when I was thinking of my kids' names. I was like, oh, that sounds good. I like that. But, a lot more of that had a lot more significance and a lot more meaning kind of in older times, I guess. Or even in native naming like that has more significance there. So, Jezreel. Should have had some charts that should have showed up there. So Jezreel Valley. The name Jezreel was God will sow. Does anybody have any? Oh, there's the map. Okay, so Jezreel Valley. There in the northern part, it's kind of blown up. We have Jezreel, the city, kind of there in the very center. Mount Carmel, there on the upper left. Megiddo in between the two. This is kind of a picture of what it looks like today. Okay, very fertile land. It was kind of a trade route. As you can kind of see, we have mountains that are on either side, so it was a easy passageway. Anybody know anything about Jezreel or the Jezreel Valley? What is the significance or importance do we have through Bible history of this area?
Many battles.
What?
There's a lot of battles.
Oh yeah, it's a very common place for sites of battles. Yeah, I mean, like to meet in this area, you had Deborah and Barak. This is where they fought. Had Gideon fighting here. Saul's death was in the Mount Bilboa area. You had Naboth's vineyard there in Jezreel, which at the time was Ahab and Jezebel. They had a house or a place there. I don't know if that's necessarily like the royal seat, but they were there a lot. That's the site of, actually that's kind of the exact spot of Jezebel's death. There in the upper left, talk about Mount Carmel. That's a very well-known spot for Elijah with his contest with the priests of Baal. You also have King Josiah of Judah. His untimely death was in this area as well. So, it was a pretty significant place in Bible history. Lots of things going on there. Let's read over in Hosea chapter 1. Why don't we start with somebody read verse 3 through. I want to read 1 through 5. I'm sorry, 3 through 5.
So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. Then the Lord said to him, call his name Jezreel, for in a little while I will avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu, and bring an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. It shall come to pass in that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel.
So, I already talked about Jezreel and kind of its significance. Well, in this passage here, who else do we have talked about? Jehu. What's the significance? Who is Jehu? Why is it that he talks about that there will be avenge the bloodshed of Jezreel on the house of Jehu? Anybody have any thoughts on what that reference is for, or what it's talking about there?
Was he a warrior of some sort, if I remember right?
Yeah, he was a warrior or a soldier in the northern kingdom. So this was kind of one of those rabbit holes that went down as far as, well, what is this even talking about here? And the main passage that talks and deals about Jehu and everything going on is in 2 Kings chapter 10, and then going forward. But just to kind of summarize, basically you have Jehu, who is anointed by Elijah to be the next northern king. And he essentially will end up going and killing Joram, which is Ahab's son, as well as Ahaziah, which at the time was the king of Judah. That happens in Jezreel. He will continue to go on and basically completely wipe out the house of Ahab. Kill all of his sons, will kill all of his friends, will kill all of his family, will kill, basically wipe everybody out. While he's in the middle of doing that, Ahaziah's 42 brothers will come up to visit Joram. Kills all of them too. As well as he will call all of the prophets and everybody who worships Baal and get them all together and wipe them out too. Does all of that with the Baal through deceit. Says, Ahab was liked him some, I'm going to like him a lot. He praised and worshipped him a little, I'm going to praise and worship him a lot. So let's get everybody together. And then he kills them all. Actually was commended by God for accomplishing that task. We read that in 2 Kings 10 and 30. Somebody want to turn over there and read that? Because this is maybe a little bit confusing as far as, well, if he gets commended by God, then why is this statement here that he's going to be avenged for what he did? So somebody read over 2 Kings 10, verse 30.
And the Lord said to Jehu, because ye have done well in doing what is right in my sight, and have done to the house of Ahab all that was in my heart, your son shall sit on the throne of Israel to the fourth generation.
So, sounds like it was a good thing. Sounds like he was commended for it. But I think that one thing that is important to point out there, what did it say, Carl, was going to be established for
The fourth generation.
4 generations. Sounds a little bit different than when God was talking to David, right? What did God tell David? He was going to set him up for forever, like an everlasting, kingship or whatever. That lineage, that line is going to continue on. And I think that is important in this passage, and might be what we're talking about here is that, that 4 generations was kind of a short time frame. Like it wasn't going to be an ongoing forever thing that's going to be set up and established. And so when we get to this point now, it's like, well, the northern kingdom's not so great. Like we read about in other areas that, the evil of the land, the fullness isn't quite there yet. And then when it becomes complete, that's when God will execute his judgment. And I think that's what basically is happening here. Israel's evil and wickedness was full, and the time for judgment was coming soon. And Israel as a nation would come to an end. The other thing that, God will sow, well, in this context here, what's he going to sow? So destruction, right? It's going to be the destruction of their physical kingdom, their physical land. Any thoughts or questions or comments on Jezreel? Okay. Second was a daughter, Lo Ruhamah. My best guess at it. Means no mercy. God's not going to spare the northern kingdom. Now, physically or spiritually, or both. I think both, at least spiritually for a time frame, but definitely physically, they're going to be done away with. But what does it say? Let's read verse 6. Somebody read verse 6 there, 6 and 7. In Hosea chapter 1.
And she conceived again and bore a daughter. And God said to him, call her name Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah, and save them by the Lord their God. I will not save them by vow, or by sword or battle, by horse or horseman.
Okay, so will not show mercy to Israel. But what does it say there? In verse 7, yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah. Where do we see that happening? What's he talking about there? What?
A remnant?
Yes, we'll have a remnant, but specifically there's a time physically, and it's around this same time frame, right? Yeah, exactly. And that's over in talking about in 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 15 and 35. Somebody turn over there and read that, please. 2 Kings 19, verse 15, and then 35.
Then Hezekiah prayed before the Lord and said, O Lord God of Israel, the one who dwells between the cherubim, you are God. You alone of the kingdoms of the earth, you have made heaven and earth. And 35.
Yeah.
And it came to pass on a certain night that the angel of the Lord went out and killed in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when people arose early in the morning, there was corpses all dead.
So, turning to God, God delivers Judah, right? What did we talk about earlier on the functions of the prophet? To teach the people to trust in God, turn to God, and he provided and protected them. That kind of goes in contrast to verse 5, where it talks about breaking the bow of Israel. Who saved Judah? Who saved Jerusalem? Was it anything that human did? No, it was turning and trusting to God, and God sending an angel going out and killing 185,000 of those Assyrians. On the reverse side, is there anything that Israel can do at this point to stop God from the destruction that is coming on them? Maybe if they turned back to him, but they're not going to. There's nothing that they can physically do to stop what God has said is going to happen. Why is it that God is going to show mercy to Judah, but not to Israel? Two things I thought of. What?
David.
Yeah. Promise to David is one of them. Second was obviously turning to God and asking for his help. So in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 12 through 16, somebody want to turn over there and read that? 2 Samuel 7, 12 through 16.
When your days are fulfilled and you rest with your fathers, I will set up your seed after you and will come from your body and will establish his kingdom.
So that's good. So that's obviously prophetic, messianic terminology, right? But would God preserving Judah is allowing that lineage to continue, right? To provide the fulfillment of that promise. Any thoughts or comments on the daughter, Lo Ruma?
I'm just thinking about the names and, just we're reading them and learning about them. We didn't know what they meant before, but, it's obvious that they did. And, when we hear, certain names like Hitler or Dahmer or, things like that, we instantly know what they are. And if someone was named that, it would stick out to us, And just to have, thinking about kind of what you went over on Wednesday about the prophets and what they had to go through. Imagine walking around with these names, and them obviously being reminders. Because I think it was studying this, I was like, I don't know how to even pronounce the word Rahama, but they did. Thinking about what that was every time they heard those names, they were thinking of this stuff that you're explaining, this history and what was to come to them, and like the impact of the name, is in this experience.
I halfway looked at other prophets' children's names for that same reason. I didn't get very far and didn't include it, but it's a good point. Excellent point, to where every time that kid is called, it's going to be a reminder of, oh, this is what this is what Hosea named them for. This is the reason why. And just like constantly over and over again is there in their mind. For the third child, somebody read verses 8 and 9 of chapter 1.
Now when she had weaned the bow Rachel, she conceived and bore a son, and God said, call his name Lo-Ami, for you are not my people, and I will not be your God.
So we'll go from God will sow to no mercy to now not my people. That's not a good trend that they're going down. I mean, basically now no longer in a covenant relationship. No longer are they have that special, I don't know, a special bond or that special covenant that God had set up with them. Basically, we're done. One thing that is interesting to note is what is the difference whenever it's talking about the kids between Jezreel and the other two? What do you find in the wording whenever, basically, before they're introduced? So in verse 3, it says that Gomer conceived and bore him a son. Do you see that with Lo Ruhamah or Lo Ami? You don't. It just says that she conceived again and bore a daughter. For Lo Ami, whenever Lo Ruhamah was weaned, she conceived and bore a son. Does that have significance? I don't know. There's no doubt, no question that Jezreel was Hosea's. But from the wording, it's questionable at best that the other two were, Hosea was the father. And I think that's kind of the point of the whole situation, right? Of Gomer being a harlot and then questionable paternity on the kids. Questions or comments? Thoughts there? All right, so like I said, the progression is not good. And basically we have a separation, right? That covenant is no longer there. Based on the wording, that God is showing them no mercy. God is no longer their God. They're no longer his people. Why is this scenario, why is this situation happening? We've already kind of talked about this a little bit, right? Why is it that this separation has to occur? Yeah, they've turned to idols. They've turned away from God, right? That's what Deuteronomy chapter 28 is all about. Have Moses going up onto saying, when you guys go into the land, go up onto Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, I think are the two, but having the blessings and the cursings. And then chapter 28 goes and enumerates and lists all those. There's a lot less, there's a lot less of the blessings that will happen that he has listed on there. And there's probably 2 or 3 times more of the cursings that will occur there. But basically, this separation has to happen because God said, if you turn away, you're going to be cast out. And so God, this is basically God following through with his word, like doing what he said he was going to do. To summarize, you follow God, you're going to remain in the land and be blessed. But if you turn from God, you're going to be removed from the land. One thing that is interesting, like I said, in Deuteronomy 28 is where you have kind of those blessings and cursings enumerated. Well, somebody turn over just a few chapters later into Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 16 and 17. Do you think it was a question on what was going to happen once they get into the land? Do you think that it's a coincidence that all of these cursings were listed out and told, this is what's going to happen. Somebody read over Deuteronomy 31, verses 16 and 17.
And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, you are about to lie down with your father. Then this people will rise and whore after the foreign gods among them in the land that they are entering. And they will forsake me and break my covenant that I have made with them. Then my anger will be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them and hide my face from them, and they will be devoured. And many evils and troubles will come upon them, so that they will say in that day, Have not these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us?
Sounds pretty similar to the wording that we're reading about now, right? In the New King James, it talks about in verse 16 there, that you, behold, you will rest with your fathers, and these people will rise and play the harlot with the gods of foreigners of the land. What was Gomer? He was a harlot. Is that kind of coincidental that he calls the shot of, they're going to leave? And if you read a little bit further, we don't have to read it, but in 19 and 20, and then verse 29, I'll read 29. This is Moses now taking that message and talking to the people. And Moses says, this is verse 29 of Deuteronomy 31, For I know that after my death you will become utterly corrupt and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger through the works of your hands. Wasn't really a question. I just imagine hearing that message from Moses. Like, I'm going to die, and I know that you guys are going to turn away. And these, like, there's no doubt. Like, we talked about on Wednesday, how many days was Moses up on the mountain before the people made the golden calf, before Aaron made the golden calf? 40 days. Not very much time at all. Didn't take them long at all before they were already turning and doing something that made God not happy, made God mad. But to hear that message of, like, by the way, I'm going to die, and you guys are going to do this. All this stuff that we just talked about in chapter 28, all those blessings and all those cursings are going to happen to you. And now we're to that point in Hosea. So God's righteous judgment will be enforced is the key. I mean, that's the point of what we have here, and the wording and the names to emphasize that was said back in Deuteronomy. His judgment will be enforced, but what's going to remain? What's still going to be there? God's love, right? God's love for them. And it's going to be there ultimately through Jesus and that plan there. So, we have their names. We have the trend that's going down. But again, that function of a prophet was to reveal a message of hope for the future for those who trust in God. And that's what we get into here in chapter 1, verse 10 and 11, and then verse 1 of chapter 2. Somebody read that for me, please.
Yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured in number. And in the place where it is said to them, You are not my people, it will be said to them, You are the sons of the living God. And the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together, and they will appoint for themselves one leader, and they will go up from the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Say to your brothers, Ami, and to your sisters, Ruhamah.
So basically, the names that we have there are a reversal of Hosea's kids' names, right? So the lo before Ruhamah and Ami basically means no or not. So that is taken away there in verse 10, where before it was said, You are not my people, now you will be the sons of the living God. Before, where in chapter 2 and verse 1, now you will be, say to your brethren, my people, or ami, and to your sisters, mercy, where before it was the opposite, right? Chapter 2 gets into, that was the messianic future hope, right? Chapter 2 is kind of switching gears back towards kind of getting back onto why it is that they are in the situation in the boat that they're in. And the first part there is talking about bringing charges against your mother. Talks about, let her put away her harlotries, put away adulteries from between her breasts, lest I strip her naked and expose her as in the day she was born, and make her like a wilderness, set her as a dry land, and slay her with thirst. For their mother has played the harlot, this is verse 5. She who conceived them has behaved shamefully, for she said, I will go after my lovers, who will give me my bread and my water, my wool and my linen, my oil and my drink. Talked about this. What was the false god that they were worshiping? Baal. What was it that Baal was supposed to be the one providing? Rain, fertility, all the stuff that they think that they're getting, they're attributing it to Baal. And then God points out to them in just a little bit that you're giving all this credit to Baal when really it was to me. You're taking the things that I gave you and you're setting them up and giving them to Baal. Which is verse, well, now whenever you have God's response to that in verse 6 through 13 is basically God's response to that. And these are the consequences of your turning to this idolatry. Therefore, behold, I will hedge up your way with thorns and wall her in, so that she cannot find her paths. She will chase her lovers, but will not overtake them. Yes, she will seek them, but will not find them. Then she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. For she did not know that I gave her grain, new wine, and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which she prepared for the Baals. Therefore I will return and take away my grain in its time, and my new wine in its season, and I will take back my wool and my linen, given to cover her nakedness. I will uncover her lewdness in the sight of her lovers, and no one shall deliver her from my hand. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, her feast days, her new moons, her Sabbaths, all her appointed feasts. And I will destroy her vines and her fig trees, of which she has said, these are my wages that my lover has given me. So I will make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. I will punish her for the days of the Baals to which she burned incense. She decked herself with her earrings and jewelry and went after her lovers. But me she forgot, says the Lord. So God is saying that all these things, again, that you attributed getting from Baal were ones, it's what I gave you. Those were the blessings that Jezreel Valley, that fertile strip, that all the things that you think are attributing to Baal came from me, and you're giving them over to Baal, you're offering them to Baal. And even whenever there's maybe a change of heart is kind of what it sounds like in verse 7, right? It's kind of like, I will go back to my first lover because that's where it was good. But even then, it's not even really attributing to the things to God. It's just like, it was better back then. I'm going to go back over there. But even if it was a return, a change of heart and return back to God, you still have to suffer the consequences for what they did, right? You can be sorry for doing something, but still have to face the consequences of the actions that you took. Any thoughts or questions or comments up to this point in chapter 2? Larry?
It would appear that it reached the point of no return.
Exactly. Yep. It's too little too late, maybe. But even then, like I said, even if it is a change of heart, I don't know that it was fully all the way, at least not at this point. what we read about next in verses 14 and 15 is what I put here is God working to bring them back. It says, therefore, behold, I will allure her, bring her into the wilderness, and speak comfort to her. I will give her vineyards from there, in the valley of Achor, as a door of hope. She shall sing there, as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. So we have, it's kind of like God took it all away, but now is kind of bringing them back and trying to get them to come back to Him, which, again, this is all in the future spiritually through Christ, but to set it up for them to be able to come back. In verse 16 through 18, and it shall be in that day, says the Lord, that you will call me my husband, and no longer call me my master. For I will take from her mouth the names of the Baals, and they shall be remembered by their names no more. In that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, with the birds of the air, and with the creeping things of the ground. Bow and sword of battle I will shatter from the earth, to make them lie down safely. So God entering into a new covenant with them and truly becoming their God. He will provide for them again like He did in the days of the wilderness. What did He do whenever they were wandering in the wilderness? What did He provide for them? Protection, food, manna, exactly, quail. What do we read about in Deuteronomy 29 and verse 5? Somebody turn around and read that real quick.
I have led you 40 years in the wilderness, your clothes have not worn out on you, and your sandals have not worn out.
So provide food, protection, clothing. Clothes didn't wear out, shoes didn't wear out. Provided all these things for him. And this is a callback to that. To remember in the days of youth, as in the days when she came up out of the land. I also think it's interesting there that in verse 16, they will be called my husband and no longer my master, or what did we say that Baal meant? Master or Lord. Now they're going to be calling God, God. And that's what I was talking about, like in verse 7, like turning back to the first lover, like not really recognizing or attributing that to God. Well, now they are. Now they're pointing out that it's going to be God as the Lord and not Baal. Go ahead, Scott.
We feel it different when back then they had successes with maybe several children or financial success. They would attribute it to different gods that represented those. And we think, well, we don't do that today. But if we attribute our successes to ourselves and think, look what I did. I've done this and I have all this. Look what I have and look what I've accomplished. We're doing the same thing.
It's a great point. That is a great point. Giving the honor and the glory where it's due. I thought verse 19 was a great statement of God's perfect balance. It says, I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and justice and loving kindness and mercy. Verse 20, I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. It doesn't get much more of God doing what He does in His own perfect judgment, righteousness, mercy, all the things. I'm about out of time. I just wanted to wrap up with we can go through and we can look at all this stuff, but how is it pertinent? How can we apply it to us today, right now? How can we take the things that we learned here and make it applicable to us? Go ahead, Marie.
In reading the prophets, the minor prophets and major prophets, we sure can learn that God is merciful, but also and patient, but also He punishes when we don't do what is right. And He gives us though information to make us want to please Him.
Yes.
And that's what I can take home with me.
Good points. Good points. David, and then Chris.
But God says one of the major problems was lack of knowing from where the blessings came
on when they were supposed to go into the land, what were they supposed to do? Drive them out. Completely get rid of them. And they didn't do it. And it was always a problem for them. Jason, then Larry.
This didn't happen overnight. This was a long progression of this attitude that the Jews had towards God and the difference or whatever. But it wasn't just the sins that they were committing, because God had a system set up with the sacrifices, with the Levites, with His law, to deal with that sin of the people. It was their turning away from Him, and from that, and there's no way for Him to have union with His people when they completely turn away from that. They turned away from that system. They turned away from God completely. So there was no way to bridge that union between God and the people.
Sorry, Larry, I'm going to make this closing point, and that goes with Jason. Our salvation is conditional, right? Just like them staying in the land was conditional upon them staying in that covenant with God, our salvation is conditional. And these idols that we're talking about with Baal and Master, well, our idols today aren't typically carved an image that we're bowing down and praying to, but what can they be? Entertainment, sports, money, things, anything basically that supersedes our devotion and our worship and our love to God is what would be an idol now.
Pick up on chapter 3 Wednesday night.
Nevin will pick up on chapter 3. Thank you for your attention.